Hello everyone, how's it going? It is Tierno as always, and I wanted to bring you another top whatever list. This time it is top 10 dragons. Now, I know I haven't done one of these top whatever lists in a while, mostly because of a lack of free time and other factors, but let me assure you it is neither dead nor forgotten. There will be more to come. As always, this list is entirely subjective, and this one in particular is meant to represent which dragon I like best. Not the most powerful, not the most important, just the one I like the best. Simple enough? Alright, so without further ado, here we go. Number 10 on my list is Chromie, also known as Chronormu. I picked her mostly because out of all the stoic and grave bronze dragons, she's the one who interacts the most with the player and is also simply fun to talk with, and I simply love her silly little time puns and such. I also like how she receives a little character development in the War Crimes novel and the Warlords of Draenor, about how she feels guilty for letting Kairos escape and how she helps the player and Khadgar try to make sense of the story. A storyline which showed quite a lot of potential if only Warlords of Draenor had some vision and decided to actually expand upon the infinite dragonflight thread they dropped. Regardless, Chromie is my number 10 and she is awesome. Number 9 on my list is the nether dragon Zzeraku, whom I've previously talked about on other topics. Before talking about Zzeraku himself, I'd just like to say that I love the story of the Nether Dragons and its potential. But like most things related to Burning Crusade, it is an enormous potential that's just not quite exploited enough. As to Zzeraku himself, he's arguably the only Nether Dragon that receives some serious characterization. We first see him in the Shadowwing manga, where he, along with another Nether Dragon, are doing the thing dragons do best, pillaging the innocent. Later on, he is involved in the battle against the Death Knight Ragnarok Bloodriver alongside the blue dragon Tyrigosa, and he starts being influenced by her genuine concern for his people. Later on, he is captured by the Blood of Zendrain Windrunner and is used by Sinestra, Deathwing's former mate, in the creation of the Twilight Dragons. Throughout the novel Night of the Dragon, the Draenei priestess Uridi tries to rescue Zzeraku, and her efforts ultimately inspire Zzeraku to sacrifice his life in order to gain victory for the good guys. I personally enjoyed the story not just because it involved a nether dragon, but also because it is a classical tale of someone overcoming his limits or his youthful prejudices. The nether dragons were seen as little more than Deathwing's bastard children, yet here is one who eventually becomes something better. Number 8 on my list is perhaps a bit of a weird one. It is the green dragon Eranikus. To be honest, I think out of all of the dragons, Eranikus probably has the most confusing story. One of Ysera's consorts, he was eventually sent by her to guard the temple of Atalhakar in the Swamp of Sorrows, only to be corrupted and eventually, I wouldn't say killed or freed, I suppose trapped by adventurers. One of the better moments of his story, however, and actually of all of Vanilla's story, I think, was during the Scepter of the Shifting Sands storyline, where he is drawn to Moonglade and cleansed of his corruption due to the combined efforts of Tyranda's priestesses, the Cenarian Circle, and adventurers. His next major appearance was in the novel Stormrage. In regards to that particular novel, I suppose it's sufficient to say that it is the only Warcraft novel that I haven't reread, although I really should. In the novel, he is torn between his fear of being corrupted again and his loyalty to the Green Dragonflight. He eventually decides to fight the Emerald Nightmare, driven by his love and loyalty for Ysera. He eventually overcomes his fear while fighting the corrupted dragon Leffen, and sacrifices his life in order to defeat him. So yeah, Eranikus. A bit confusing, but if you succeed in breaking it down, it's actually kind of an interesting story, and probably one of the driving forces of the novel Stormrage, and God knows it needs it. Number 7 on my list is Kalecgos. While there are a lot of reasons why I like him, from his personality and friendship with many mortals, and how he often served as a sort of bridge between the mysterious and possibly dangerous blue dragonflight and the rest of the world, what I personally enjoyed the most was his story regarding Envina and later Jaina, his love life basically. I enjoyed how the two, meaning Anvina and Kalec, grew close throughout the Sunwell Trilogy manga, a storyline which made sense despite, well, one being a dragon and the other being the embodiment of the Sunwell. While Anvina's sacrifice in Burning Crusade didn't really seem to impact Kalecgos' character in-game, the novel Night of the Dragon expands greatly on it and how it made Kalec really hate Krasus, Anvina's creator. The novel also has several great moments where Kalecgos' character is greatly developed, and he eventually fully moves on in Tides of War, where he starts a relationship with Jaina Proudmoore. All in all, Kalecgos often manages to prop up otherwise mediocre books, such as Dawn of the Aspects or Night of the Dragon, due to his personality and him often being a viewpoint character. Speaking of which, number 6 on my list is the dragon Krasus. Now, this is probably the most controversial pick on my list, and I understand why someone would think so. But I personally really like Krasus. He is a great representation of the, I guess you could say, stereotypical wise dragon character, which is an archetype that I personally enjoy. Alexstrasza also had the habit of, perhaps unintentionally, manipulating others to do his bidding, something that he is criticized for and eventually acknowledges, and his most notable trait is probably his immense love and loyalty for Alexstrasza. While some of his actions could be interpreted as a bit Mary Sue-ish, for instance his prophecy regarding Jaina becoming the leader of the Kirin Tor, overall I think he brings a great aura of mystery, power, and, in a way, authority to the books he is in, thanks to his seniority and obvious expertise. His sacrifice and death, though, felt a bit rushed to me. While at first I was happy to have a short little scene where Krasus finally gets a moment to relax and be with his love, I was rather saddened to see one of the greatest figures of the expanded universe die so quickly. His death, though, makes sense in context and serves as a great impetus for the story of the Twilight of the Aspects novel. And speaking of which, number 5 on my list is Alexstrasza. We finally have an aspect on the list. If I were to be perfectly honest, if it weren't for the novel Twilight of the Aspects, I probably would not have placed her on the list, at least not this high. Alexstrasza has a bit of a one-dimensional character, which makes sense in context. Since she is the life-binder and the mother, so to say, of the Red Dragonflight, she acts very motherly and is very protective towards all life. Her more interesting character moments come when that is not the case. For instance, when, near the end of the Day of the Dragon novel, she murders Necro's Skullcrusher in cold blood, which makes sense in context. Her greatest character moment, though, I feel, was the Twilight of the Aspects novel. There she sees her last mate Krasus sacrifice himself, and when all of the evidence seems to point that he was actually a traitor, she finally breaks and flees in desperation, wasting away in Desolace. This was an incredible moment, I think, because of how unmovable, so to say, she was previously. I don't think I could ever have imagined Alexstrasza the Lifebinder, the one who always brought hope to every story she was in, becoming so depressed and so broken as she did in this book. As such, when she is eventually brought back thanks to the efforts of Thrall, it makes all the greater impact on the story, and Christy Golden greatly portrays why she is so important, not just as one of the 5 dragon aspects, but also as the Lifebinder it's herself. So yeah, Alexstrasza. Number 4 on my list is Malygos. I personally like him because I find his domain to be one of the most interesting ones, that of magic, and in the few moments where he appears you do get the sense that this is a being who is incredibly versed in its ways. Malygos is perhaps the most tragic of the 5 dragon aspects. Betrayed by his closest friend Nefarian in the War of the Ancients, he saw the vast majority of his dragonflight destroyed thanks to the Demon Soul, the very artifact he helped make. Their loss, along with the loss of most of his consorts, drove him mad and permanently destroyed the once humor-filled aspect. Even when he regained his sanity and his powers later on, his jovial disposition did not return, as he saw how much magic across the world had decayed thanks to the abuse of mortals. Distressed by this, he thought that drastic action was the only solution to the problem, namely exterminating all of the magic uses of the world and redirecting all of the ley lines to the Nexus, which brought him into conflict with the other dragonflights, leading to his death. Even so, however, he was acknowledged by Alexstrasza to be one of the world's greatest protectors, and Deathwing himself stated that later on that Malygos' death made his plans in Cataclysm much easier. Number 3 on my list is the big guy himself, Deathwing. In my honest opinion, Deathwing is one of the greatest villains of the Warcraft universe, and his schemes and plots, although often an extension of the old gods' own, are still incredibly menacing. While we don't often gain insight into Deathwing himself, his own thoughts and beliefs, he is nonetheless an enormous force of evil and so corrupted that his body itself was twisted. Hell, the simple fact that he returned to Azeroth caused the cataclysm. Deathwing is a being that cares only for himself, and one who has manipulated events throughout Warcraft's lore. Perhaps one of the greatest insights we gain into him came from the Charge of the Aspects short story, where he attempts to trap Thrall within the earth and rages about how great and tiring the burden the Titans placed upon him is. While those thoughts were probably not originally his own, they also serve to show how great an influence the old gods have on him, and how even one of the noblest dragons can fall. Number 2 on my list is Nozdormu, the Timeless One. In my opinion, he's the most interesting out of all of the aspects, and the most mysterious one. While he was originally portrayed as a being who did not care for the events of the mortal world, so focused he was on the timelines and on his own collection, the existence of the infinite dragonfly drastically changed Nozdormu's character from an objective observer of time and the world to an active player in it. His greatest inner demon is the knowledge that he will one day become the very antithesis of what he was charged with, the infinite dragonflight leader Murozond, who became so obsessed with his own mortality and with stopping the Burning Legion that he willingly joined the old gods and began manipulating the timelines to change the outcome of history. Eventually, Nozdormu became lost in the timelines, looking for the cause of his future corruption, to the point where he forgot the most important thing about his charge until Thrall reminded him that the most important thing is this particular moment. So yeah, Nozdormu, the Timeless One. I wonder if you could guess who number 1 is. Well, it is time to reveal it. And number 1 is...
versus Nefarian!
Welcome to my personal sanctum, hero.
Victory or death! Behold the true power of Nefarian! Infinite mana, armored dragon scales.
Number 1 on my list is Nefarian. You're probably expecting Ysera, weren't you, since she is the only missing aspect. But no, my all-time favorite dragon is Nefarian. I just love his schemes and manipulations, in conjunction with Onyxia and Vanilla. I love his various experiments, and I like that he controls the Dark Horde, the only true Horde. After Deathwing's disappearance, I don't think anyone would have expected a black dragon to be a greater threat than burning down the occasional village, but Nefarian and Onyxia proved to be more. Nefarian is very much his father's son, expertly manipulating various mortals to his will, and what he lacks in power compared to his father, he more than makes up in ingenuity. Knowing his standing forces are not enough to claim the entirety of Blackrock Spire from Ragnaros' forces, never mind fight the other dragonflights, he began his experiments, resulting in the creation of numerous creatures such as chromatic dragons, dragonmen, and even a chromatic dragon so great it required the 4 remaining aspects plus Thrall to overcome. His experiments formed the basis for the eventual creation of the Twilight Dragonflight, and his contribution was so great that he was eventually resurrected by Deathwing to continue with his experiments. And this brings us to the end of Top 10 Dragons. I hope you enjoyed it, and I would really like to hear in the comments below what your personal favorite dragon is. Other than that, I'll see you all later.